Hi, my name is Olivia Epley. I am a senior in Gallatin. I am physically, emotionally, and developmentally disabled, and the latter of which relates to my being on the autism spectrum. In accordance with that, I was listening to all of my peers' presentations, and I realized, sort of at the last minute, you'll see my notes here, that I was doing a form of masking. With this presentation, you'll see it's pink, it's very sanitized. And in some regard, in some ways it does sanitize the experience that I had and the experience that the ways in which NGOs operate on a global sort of human rights scale. So I want to make 2 points before I go into my presentation. The first is that I think it's important to acknowledge that my organization operates within a system of government-compliant NGOs. They work with and legitimize the British government, and much of my resistance involved the presence of my identity just in the NGO space and the little sort of ways myself and my fellow disabled coworkers could resist, which included leftist book clubs we participated in, attending rallies, and fielding calls from folks with disabilities across Wales as they struggled to do things, including crossing the street on time. I found that the lights that guide how long you have to cross the street as a pedestrian are about 5 seconds, which is not enough for me to cross running. I'm sure that folks who have physical impairments that would prevent them from crossing the street in a timely manner would have a lot more trouble with that. And the second point that I wanted to make is that my experience was in some ways isolating. I didn't consider that being alone abroad and disabled would be uniquely difficult. I had to make some hard medical decisions, and my mother had to come, as you'll see, and deliver medication. We tried to make a good time out of that. To future fellows, you're fighting a very good fight, but you must come first, if not objectively, then out of necessity to do your work. So I'm going to quickly go over my presentation now. I worked for Disability Wales, which is a nonprofit located in Caerphilly, Wales. I stayed in Cardiff in a hotel. I left in June, and I took a few days break with my mother for her to deliver my medication, and we made a few days out of it in France, and I came back in August. Well, formatting didn't quite work out there, but Disability Wales is a charity or a nonprofit. They tend to call it a charity over there, and it strives to achieve rights, equality, and independent living of disabled people in Wales. It works on a handful of projects a year. The project that I worked on most is the UNCRD, they switch it around depending if you're in the US and the UK, the CRPD project, which seeks to bring education about the UNCRPD to Welsh primary and secondary schools. Now, what is the UNCRPD? Essentially, it's called the UN Conference on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. A bunch of people got together, a bunch of very smart, radical people, and created this and had a convention in which they created a document that lays out the universal rights and protections for people with disabilities. Currently, it is, I'll say it's a revolutionary document with both which both affirms rights and provides policy suggestions for the enactment of those rights, which is rare in these kinds of conventions. And it has been signed but not ratified by the United States. Currently, the last it was mentioned was by the Obama administration, who tried to put it through Congress as they had promised to do. Didn't work out in Congress for various reasons, including primarily Republican resistance to it for various reasons, but which ultimately came down to the idea that the ADA was supplying what was necessary, what was within the UNCRPD, so this new legislation would not be necessary. Of course, it really just was about not providing financial assistance to people who needed it the most, which seems to be, I'll just say that. All right, so my role was to help implement the UNCRPD within the Welsh secondary and primary school educational system. DW really was interested in raising awareness of the rights that are afforded to children and adults within the UNCRPD to school children, and I helped disseminate some information. I helped create some information. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to get to some other stuff. I worked on consulting with other organizations, which often involved doing research on the state of disability advocacy within Wales and Britain. I also helped with Green Dragon accreditation, which is basically just making the company more environmentally friendly. Don't have much time for this, but basically this was the cultural experience. You'll see why I call it sanitized. It's very pink and very castle-y, and Wales is truly very beautiful. We went on a trip to the Senedd, which I think is how that's pronounced. Cymru is the word for Wales, or Welsh. So by the Cardiff Bay is the Senedd, and we visited that as a community, as an organization. Those are my friends. We in the radical leftist book club at the bottom right, which was amazing. Yeah, and then this was just a little summary of my mom and I's trip in France. It was a nice respite, and I think it was what I needed to make it through a long summer. And I'm just very grateful for the opportunity to have gone and connected with people in an international context who identify as disabled like myself. I had a really amazing time overall. I think going forward with the fellowship, I really want everyone to keep in mind that going abroad and being there for a period of time, working on very intense work, is something that needs to be done intentionally and planned ahead very thoroughly. I think I had a transformative time and wouldn't change it, and I learned a lot about the disability space, so thank you very much. And I want to hand it over to Louisa.